Last week in Michigan politics, battling school budgets in Lansing are prioritizing different goals. We explain how the newly passed House Republican budget differs from the Senate Democrats' plan. Plus, calls for Michigan State Police's top brass to resign are growing. What lawmakers are saying after a vote of no confidence in MSP's leadership. And pushback against a West Michigan community's first Pride Festival reached the county board. We share what community members are saying and how the county responded. Hi there, I'm Julia Gorman filling in for Josh Alburtus. This is the 13 on your side rundown. We begin with movement on a portion of the state budget last week. Michigan Republicans are calling their K-12 school budget bill transformational after passing it along party lines in the state house. Their version of the education budget appropriation bill comes a little less than a month since Senate Democrats voted to approve their version of the bill. While the House and Senate's overall funding only differs by $100 million, the nearly $22 billion budgets prioritize different programs. The House Republican plan would see the state's highest ever per pupil allowance of $12,000. GOP lawmakers were able to allow for the historic per pupil funding by cutting funding for universal programming and giving school districts the power to decide what programs they'll implement. The Senate Democrats' plan continues much of the same universal funding for programming without the flexibility of the Republican plan. Last week, House Democrats also shared their vision for school funding. At a press conference, the Democrats preempted the Republican bill with a $24 billion plan that included a $1 billion grant program for infrastructure improvement. The plan was unveiled a day before the House bill was passed, and parts of it could be used in negotiations as the specifics of the budget continue to get hammered out. The House Democrats' plan also prioritizes free pre-K and free lunch and breakfast programs by codifying their funding annually, a point that Democrats have already used to gain public support. And Democrats aren't the only ones voicing concern about the Republican proposed budget. The American Heart Association tells 13 on your side's Kylie Lichter why cuts to the free lunch program endanger the success of Michigan students.
The American Heart Association says Michigan schools will be in a tricky spot after they say a new State House of Representatives budget for K-12 schools threatens healthy meals for all. While the organization supports the increase in per-pupil funding proposed in the budget, they say it comes at the expense of other budget items.
The schools now will have to decide which programs they want to fund, and they'll have to take the money from that allotment.
State Government Relations Director Amanda Klein says for the past 2 years, Healthy Meals for All was directly funded in the budget. The program ensures all Michigan public school students K-12 get daily free breakfast and lunch. But now schools may choose to cut it to fund other things.
They don't want to pull the funding from the in-school class instruction. So it's going to, the possibility that this could go away when we know how effective the program is a little disappointing to see.
Not only does the program feed thousands of students, Klein says, it saves families on average $850 a year.
As they're looking at their budgets going into next year, the potential that this program might not be there, and they're going to have to start thinking about, do they have the money for breakfast and lunch?
The association, in collaboration, has formed the Michigan School Meals Coalition in hopes to get funding back on the table. Chairwoman of the House Education and Workforce Committee, Nancy DeBoer, says the proposed changes to the budget for K-12 schools provides flexibility for the school districts.
Meals, however their population works the best, then they can make those decisions with their school board and administration.
And says they are building a budget that's best for the students in the state of Michigan.
You may have seen traffic signs warning of a new text scam as you're driving down the highway, or a warning on social media from a local law enforcement agency. That's because more and more folks are getting texts calling for action. The message is about outstanding traffic tickets and claims to be from the Michigan State Department of Vehicles. Of course, we know Michigan doesn't have a DMV, but the Secretary of State's office instead. The messages also say the recipient could face penalties if the ticket is not paid through an included link.
A common denominator on a lot of these is a sense of urgency. And so the text will say something to the effect of, you need to make payment immediately or very quickly, or you'll be arrested. And the scam today that's going out has those elements as well.
Now, if you get one of these texts, don't open the link or try and make any payments. You can report the scam to the state attorney general's office, but you don't need to call 911. Millions in Medicare and Medicaid funding could be cut if the Senate passes the One Big Beautiful bill. Local social workers are now expressing their concerns. Earlier this year, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services proposed a policy change that would raise the asset limit for Medicaid qualifications. This allowed more Michiganders to qualify for Medicaid benefits. But after the House passed the One Big Beautiful bill, workers from the Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, commonly known as PACE, are worried those funds will be slashed for their patients. Sarah Milanowski, a social worker at Life Circles PACE in Holland, says 98% of their seniors are using Medicaid or Medicare benefits. She worries future changes will decrease funding amounts, causing stress to the 82,000 seniors PACE serves annually.
We should all be worried because that means adult children potentially are leaving the workforce early to care for mom and dad, and then their retirement gets shortchanged. So it's this systematic challenge that we're all facing, and we'll begin to see ripples immediately.
Milanowski says the average cost of 1 month in a nursing home is more than $11,000. Families who use PACE programs can receive services without the hefty cost. Local PACE workers and those who utilize PACE programs are hoping to bring their concerns to Lansing and speak with lawmakers about these potential cuts. Controversy over the first Pride Festival in Montcalm County planned for later this month, as dozens packed a commission meeting last week. Some community members say the festival goes against a decades-old ordinance, but festival supporters say the real reason is an attack on their identity. 13 on Your Side's Kelly Lichter reports.
28 public comments.
My entire community is being told that they are unwanted in their own county.
And we believe that what's going on in that park at the end of this month is wrong.
Just weeks before our event, an ordinance older than I am has suddenly been dusted off.
Stand up and enforce the ordinance for the good of all and return the park to our taxpayers.
Were heard Monday night at a Montcalm County Commission meeting all over Flat River Pride Festival.
This community spoke about the importance of community and about standing together, but failed to include everyone.
The event, hosted by Voices of Flat River Pride, is the first annual Pride event in Montcalm County. However, it has been subject to scrutiny a month before the event, planned for June 28th, all because of a 30-year-old county ordinance.
It's not about the group. It's about the ordinance that you guys had and follow them.
The ordinance, adopted in 1995, lay out rules such as noise regulation, which community members in opposition brought up at the meeting.
This park is part of our neighborhood. We love to keep it intimate and small.
But supporters of the event say the ordinance is rarely, if ever, enforced. It is now being used as a cover-up for anti-LGBTQ feelings.
One that no one has enforced, referenced, or even seemed to know existed until a Pride event was on the calendar. Now, it's conveniently being used to question our right to utilize the park the way we intended to when we rented it.
During public comment, a few community members did bring out their Bibles to condemn the LGBTQ community. But Commission members Adam Peterson and Charlie Mahar say this issue is not about that.
I do believe that it's not right to enforce an ordinance on one group, even though it is a legal ordinance.
And the group has the right to hold their event at McCarthy Park in Greenville as planned.
District 3 Commissioner Adam Peterson did say the event could apply for a variance, allowing them to avoid a potential fine still on the table. It's been more than a year since Ottawa County has had a full-time county administrator. Last week, the county announced an end was near, but now it's going to be at least another 2 weeks. We'll tell you why next. Recovery from ice storms has been a pain for Michiganders up north, and with cuts now threatening the National Weather Service, a Michigan senator is stepping in. Senator Gary Peters introduced a bill that would exempt critical NWS positions from executive orders imposing a hiring freeze. Peters says the recent legislations from the Trump administration have left many NWS forecasting offices without enough staff for around-the-clock monitoring. He says in places like the Upper Peninsula, where weather can change on a dime, constant watching is crucial. Specifically, the positions protected are hydrologists, meteorologists, and field technicians. And weather is also having an effect on how the state's largest utility company is viewing grid reliability. A pilot program is cutting down on power outages, according to Consumers Energy. The utility buried 9 miles of underground power lines in 6 counties across the state, including Allegan, Ottawa, and Montcalm here in West Michigan. They say the areas with buried power lines had fewer outages and more reliability than areas with traditional power lines. This comes after much scrutiny of the company from Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel for recent rate increase requests. Some of the rate requests have listed burying power lines as a reason for the rate hikes. The success of the program includes no outages from storm-related activity.
These are areas that are typically hit frequently or have reoccurring outages. A lot of times these are areas with dense tree cover. We know that trees and limbs are the #1 cause of outages, and that's a benefit of the underground pilot program.
Over the next 5 years, Consumers plans to bury more than 1,000 more miles of power lines if it gets approval from the state. Grand Rapids Parks and Recreation Director is taking a new job in Kalamazoo. David Marquardt has been hired as the new Deputy City Manager down in Kalamazoo. He'll be responsible for public services, Parks and Recreation, and the Communications Department. He's led Grand Rapids Parks and Rec Department since 2015, overseeing a $20 million budget and 300 employees. Marquardt's last day in Grand Rapids is the 4th of July. He starts in Kalamazoo on the 7th. The Grand Rapids City Manager says they're working on a transition plan for interim leadership. The search for a new administrator in Ottawa County is on pause for 2 weeks. Commissioners made that decision after a special meeting to hear from the only remaining finalist for the job. Michael Tremblay, a retiring U.S. Army officer, originally from Schoolcraft, Michigan, recently had a public interview. The other 2 finalists have dropped out. Board Chairperson John Teeple says there's still work to do.
Frankly, this process on the administrative search, as hard as it's been, I was thinking about it the last couple of days. I think it's actually has some really positive attributes too. There's a lot of communication going on to try to figure out how best to do this, and it's working in a good direction. So yeah, that's tough, but that's how it is, and we'll get there. We're going to get there.
Ottawa County has been without a permanent county administrator since John Gibbs was fired in February of 2024. Michigan lawmakers are calling for the state police's top officers to step down. Why the low confidence in leadership from state troopers? That's next. We're hearing from state lawmakers after a vast majority of Michigan state troopers say they have no confidence in their leadership. To simply put it, some lawmakers want Colonel James Grady out of the job.
Let's step up. Let's change leadership. We've given this guy a chance. He's not performing. Let's replace him with somebody that actually has our troopers' backs.
That's State Senator Eric Nesbitt siding with state troopers in a recent letter depicting how some of them feel. In the joint letter by the Michigan State Police Troopers Association and the Michigan State Police Command Officers Association, members of the unions were asked to vote if they had confidence in Colonel Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brimacombe. 75% of members responded, with 98% of the MSPTA saying no and 90% of the MSPCOA saying no. The letters say the 2 MSP leaders have failed to live up to the agency's philosophy. Several lawmakers have spoken up in support of this letter, including State Senator Nesbitt. He says morale is down because Colonel Grady has strayed away from putting the agency first.
It's not about these woke ideology, social justice programs. Our cops and law enforcement officials, officers, they're not social welfare workers. There's a place for those folks. It's not in law enforcement, and that's what we've seen is that these woke policies of cashless bonds for violent felons, policies of letting out criminals, violent criminals early, it's not working, it hasn't worked.
But it's not up to lawmakers or even employees to find a new leader. Governor Gretchen Whitmer is in charge of deciding who leaves the agency. We reached out to her office. Her press secretary responded saying, quote, Colonel Grady has demonstrated strong and steady leadership at the helm of the Michigan State Police. He has worked his way up through the ranks over 25 years, putting public safety first and keeping our communities safe. She goes on to credit him, saying, quote, Michigan has seen major drops in violent crime recently. He's also had troopers' backs by fighting for pay raises for the men and women who risk their life every day to keep our state safe. We have full confidence in Colonel Grady to continue getting the job done, end quote. Several other lawmakers are also speaking up. See what they have to say on our website, 13onyourside.com. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources has issued new advisories for anglers. Coming up, how forever chemicals are affecting fish and waterways in the state. With multiple bills aiming to make PFAS testing free for children currently in committees in the Michigan legislature, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources just announced new advisories about eating fish from our waterways. The new recommendations triple the number of lakes and rivers where certain species of fish are advised not to be consumed. 13 on your side's Micah Cho looks at why the number of fish has increased so much in recent years.
If you're looking for a place to fish in Michigan, you have a lot of options.
They're like plasticky. I've been getting some bites out of it. I just lost 3 of them right now under the rocks or somewhere there in there.
But depending on where you are, you might want to check to see if the fish you're catching are safe to eat, if catch and keep is your thing.
I got an email from the Michigan email service from the DNR, and I was told that, well, I read that I could go to the DNR website and read all about it.
Adam Carrillo, who we saw fishing on the banks of the Grand River, is talking about the Eat Safe fish guides that are published by the state's Department of Health and Human Services. It details fish in specific lakes, rivers, and streams that are either safe or unsafe to eat in 600 bodies of water across Michigan due to PFOS, man-made chemicals that have made their way into the water. In 2023, 33 waterways had at least one species of fish considered unsafe to eat. In this year's guide, that number has nearly tripled. Now 98, at least one fish species flagged as unsafe to eat.
There are 65 new water bodies this year that have a PFOS-driven do not eat advisory.
Marcus Wasilewicz, who studies toxicology for MD-HHS, says the jump is due to more research rather than more fish becoming toxic.
To 98, and the reason that we see that partially is due to the increased PFOS toxicity that we are using in these new updated guides and new water bodies that have been tested since the last guides have come out.
For example, at Batchy's Park Pond in Wyoming, do not eat advisories cover every species of fish in the water, including crappie, bluegill, and sunfish. However, in the Grand River, where Carrillo was fishing, only 2 species, carp and rock bass, are under the do not eat advisory. Other fish, according to Wasilewicz, may have limitations on them, like only eat 1 or 2 8-ounce servings a month. That's why he says it's important to check out the safe fish advisories before serving up any fillets.
The DNR guide also lists mercury as a concern. The metal seeps into waterways from coal-burning power plants, which can later get into fish. You can find a link to the DNR's Safe Fish Guide in this story on 13onyourside.com. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all of the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.